Welcome home. This is the Irish Roots Cafe, where every day is a holiday, and there's always room for one more. Come right this way. Have a seat with me today in the corner booth celebrating our 121st week. Sweeney, clear the floor. Katie, bar the door. Molly, put on another pot of Irish coffee and bring out the Irish dancers. It's time we get this show on the road. We've got another full house today. Not a chair to spare. I'm Mike OLaughlin, your host, and you can reach me on my webpage at irishroots.com. And be sure to check out the written show notes on my blog, because we've got extra links there, and everything I talk about here, you've got a link you can click on to go right there. It makes it a lot easier. And I've got a little bit in each one that's not on the other, so it pays to be thorough, folks. And remember, you can phone 816-256-3360 to leave your comments on my recorder. Try it, you'll like it. Now, among today's topics, Porter is the Irish family name of the day. Searching for Arthur of County Antrim and McDowell. Grammys Brown Bread recipe. Audiobook excerpt. Early Irish names in St. Louis. The Aylwards of Canada is a web page we picked out. School of Canadian Irish Studies doing very well. And the New York Public Library online services. Well, now it's time for the notes for the week. Here, I've got a note here. I think I might have done this one before, but I found it in my list of things to do, and I thought, well, I had a couple other questions along the same line, so I thought I'd better answer it. And this is where Nicholas McDowell wrote me, and he had a couple of questions and said, his name McDowell, some people say it's from Ireland, some people Scotland, some people even say it's from Wales, and some people even said Norway. Well, now I tell you, that Mc prefix is really not native to Norway, so you might make that a slight chance, although some McDowells could have left Ireland and gone to Norway, or some name similar to Dowell could have moved into Ireland and they just put a Mac on the front of it just as a process of ameliorization, really. But that's, it'd be pretty far out to do that. So I'm saying the odds are it's probably Scotland or Ireland with that Mac on the name there. If you go to that webpage and do that free surname search, it'll tell you what counties it's found most often in my books and the county books. That should help. And he also says, I said that sometimes you'll find the names written with an M apostrophe after it instead of a Mac or a Mick. That AC or C after the M has just sort of been eliminated for ease sake, and that little apostrophe put in there. Well, and he wants to know, can I just now spell my name that way? So, well, it might get you in trouble with the government. I guess among friends you could, but things are much more official today, and most of the times I cited that process, it was like a census taker might just slap the apostrophe in there because he's been doing it all day and he had all these Macs to contend with. So I think it was more or less other people taking down the name in records did that, but I don't think you can really call that an official spelling. I hope that clears a lot of the letters I had coming in on that one. Number 2, we added a reader, I think about 2 weeks ago, we added a blog reader to this blog. If you're getting it from my webpage, there's a little place where it says listen now. And what that is, it's a real neat little service they've got started up, and it just reads this blog out exactly as it appears, and they've done a pretty good job of training that computer voice. But don't mistake it. That's not the podcast. The podcast has things that aren't in the strict blog reading, and this is the podcast, not the computer reading. So we've got two different things. We've got a blog reader that reads the blog exactly as it appears, and then we've got the podcast on which this the blog sort of modeled after as show notes. Hey, number 3, I saw that the New York Public Library was online, and it's been a little reorganized, and it looks like they're really trying to do a good job of it. You can contact them very easily, and they made some changes from a few little glitches they had when they started. So I'd say that's definitely worth a check if you have business in that area. And that's at nypl.org/question/. But the link's on the blog. And hey, I still am on Genealogy Wise, and it's been a lot of fun. There's still a whole lot of people there, so it looks good so far. Let's hope this one lasts. If they can keep this up for a year or so, boy, what a resource that'll be. But that's Genealogy Wise, and we're having a heck of a good time with it. The last note will be, yes, we are getting ready to take off and do the Dublin Irish Festival again this year for the 11th year in a row. And we're going to be doing those Irish Academy classes the 2 days before the festival. And it ought to be a lot of fun. I hope to see some of you guys there. Just give me a holler. If you listen to the podcast, give me a holler out there and let me know that I'm reaching some people. Well, now I'm telling you, it's time we move on to what we're going to do. We're going to do the Book of the Month. Now, you notice last week we started doing something a little bit different. We're taking that audio book, and I'm trying to take some things that might be of general interest from that book on the Irish settlers and on the American frontier that I wrote in '84 and updated in 2008. And we're going to do it again this week, and Molly Nickel is going to read it again. She's actually read almost the whole book already into the studio microphones here, so it's getting real interesting. And this time we're covering just a little intro on the Irish in St. Louis from 1770 onwards. And you're going to see some names like Melanphy, Brady and McKnight, O'Reilly, O'Connor, the Kerry Patch, politics, organization, and education covered in that chapter. But we're just going to take a 3-minute excerpt here. And I note that the Irish were the largest foreign-born population in St. Louis around 1817, 1820, at least according to our sources, and we cite them in the book, so it's not just idle talk. Of course, there weren't that many people in St. Louis to begin with, so it's not like there was an army of Irish there, but they were, proportion to the rest of the population, they were number one foreign-born. And you got to remember, we're talking about before the famine. This has nothing to do with the big Irish famine, 1847 or so at the height of it. And they were there in real good numbers. And, gosh, the first and second sheriff, justices of the peace with Irish names are everywhere. Lawless was a famous early attorney. Charles and Cummins were the first and second proprietors of the first newspaper in St. Louis, said to be the first newspaper west of the Mississippi in that area. And shoot, there's Patrick Dillon, James Arnold, Hugh Rankin, James Timon, Michael Daly, all those guys were upstanding merchants. Thomas Forsyth was a U.S. Indian agent. Major James McGonigal was a quartermaster. Patrick Sullivan was a professor at the college. There's also a Rochford. And these folks were all there in the territorial days of St. Louis before statehood and well before the famine area in Ireland. And you have to remember, I tell you, old Jeremiah Connor was really an outstanding figure there in those early days, all the way down to at least 1818. He had one official position, but he was a sheriff and justice of the peace, and he really held that town together, I think. But more about that book, you can go to our webpage or click on our blog, and you'll see it. It's titled Missouri Irish.
The Story of the Irish in St. Louis from 1770. Early settlers, Brady and McKnight, Melanphy, O'Reilly, O'Connor, the Kerry Patch, the Murphy Wagon, politics, organizations, and education. St. Louis Irish. Historian Frederick Billen gives us the adult male population of St. Louis in the years 1817 to 1820. From his estimates, the Irish were 1/7 of the total population and the largest foreign-born group in the city. Only those of American birth outnumbered the Irish-born. His analysis was as follows. The population, quote, was in round numbers about 700, divided about as follows. Of American birth, say 400. original French and Spanish, 150, and of foreign birth, 150. Of these last, fully two-thirds, or about 100, were Irishmen, some 15 to 20 European Frenchmen, about the same number of English and Scotsmen, and some 10 or 12 Germans." Unquote. Quote, "Of our Irish citizens of that day in St. Louis included in their number a very liberal proportion of gentlemen of education and acquirements, some of whom held important positions in our then recently acquired territory. I instance James Rankin, our first, and Jeremiah Connor, our second sheriff, Moses Scott, Thomas McGuire, William Sullivan, Patrick Walsh, justices of the peace, Luke E. Lawless, attorney, afterwards judge, Joseph Charles and James C. Cummins, first and second proprietors of the Missouri Gazette, John and Thomas McKnight, John and Thomas Brady, John Melanphy, Thomas Hanley, Patrick Dillon, James Arnold, John Crawford, Hugh Rankin, Andrew Elliott, Robert H. Catherwood, James Timon, Sr., father of the late Reverend Bishop Timon of Buffalo, Michael Daly, all merchants, Major Thomas Forsyth, United States Indian Agent, Major James McGonigal, Quartermaster, United States Army, James Nagel, Arthur L. McGinnis, lawyers, Patrick Sullivan, professor at the college, Francis Rochford, teacher, Matthew Murphy, and others whose names do not occur to me. All these were here in the territorial days of St. Louis." Unquote.
Let me see now. Number 2, the second book. I saw another interesting book online. The Irish Palatines in Ontario. That's in Canada, of course. Religion, Ethnicity, and Rural Migration. Now, this is not my book, but you can get it at globalgenealogy.com, and it's published by Global Heritage Press, and it provides a broad history of the Palatines in Ontario, where they came from and where they settled and what characterized their communities. It's not a big, gigantic book just of lists of names. There are a few lists, I understand, but it's also a history of sort of what happened and why, I imagine. But that's the second one for the day, and that takes care of our books for today's podcast. Hey, and coming up, we've got some of the words that you should know if you're going to Ireland, and even though they speak English over there, there's some words that just don't mean the same thing, so you better know what they are before you start using them and end up in trouble at the end of a street somewhere. But now you know what time it is. It's time to raise our eyes skywards and give thanks and ask for help. Coming up are today's Magnificent Seven. Well, number 1, Molly Arthur Cantor of Murray, Kentucky. Welcome as a member. She's searching for Arthur from County Antrim in the late 1600s. Number 2, Grenville Hall of County Antrim, Ireland. Welcome as a member. Let me see. Grenville didn't give me any name there, so we're assuming that might be he's looking for Hall in County Antrim, which I'm sure there are some Hall families there. Number 3, Patricia Jarrett of Athens, Georgia. Your County Cork genealogy book and passenger list have shipped. Number 4, William Bodkin of Silves, Portugal. Your families of Galway shipped. 5, Hubert Walbon of Marne, France. Your County Antrim genealogy has shipped. Number 6, Cynthia Tanchik of Winnipeg, Canada. Your families of County Cork book has shipped. Number 7, Anne Marie Joy of the United Kingdom. Your Kings and Queens County genealogy book has shipped. Whew, boy, that takes care of the Magnificent Seven today. I am sure glad we've got those folks helping us, because you know what? If you didn't help us do this, I couldn't do the books, I couldn't do the podcast, and It's sure a lot of fun, and I think we're learning more than just names and dates, too, you know. That's where it all starts, but then it branches out into all kinds of other things. Now it's time we move on to the Irish family name of the day. Well, the name for the day is Porter, and that's in honor of a member. And related spellings of the name are Lee Porter, Leporter, and usually there's a space before that Le, but not always. And you can always spell it a little bit different. The end of it, you could say Portre maybe in the 17th century, but it's a pretty constant spelling compared to other family names we find. And if we take just a quick look at some of the notes on the names that I've put together in the Irish Families Project, that's the 34-book set I put together on Irish families in Ireland. Got at least one for each county. And the name from which Porter can be taken, they say, was Lee Porter, so L-E before the name Porter. So even such as that, it's a well-known English name in that form. And a lot of times that L-E got dropped, just like Mac and O. And in modern times, people think it's a name of the province of Ulster. That's in the north of Ireland. And they also say that it came into Ireland real early when it was of English origins, and that probably means with the Norman invasions, huh? And they say it spread fairly numerous over the whole Ireland, but not in the province of Connaught. And, you know, that's where they said there's not enough water to drown a man or wood to hang him. And I think they pushed all the Irish into the province of Connaught, and maybe that's why the Porters didn't go there. I don't know. But it's a fairly numerous name in Ireland today, and you can find both Catholic and Protestant families of the name. And we'll just take a quick look here. The census of 1659 finds the name as a principal one in County Donegal, and Milesian Families of Ireland gives the name as English in at least one instance, arriving in County Tyrone in 1640. But we're pretty sure that family name arrived in other instances way before that date. Now, all that comes from the Book of Irish Families, Great and Small. I took that excerpt out of that book. There's a little more in it. Let's look also at the Irish Book of Arms. Now, we're going to find three families: the Porter family of Bell Island, County Longford, the Porter family of County Tyrone, and we also have a third coat of arms pictured in that book, and that's the arms of Dr. John Porter in 1806, and in that also shown. And, hey, you know, coming up a little bit later in this episode, they've discovered an Irish village, and it's the first one that they're digging up and excavating that we know of in the U.S., so that's going to be interesting. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. Let's take one last look at the Porter name and look at the Free Master Index search of Irish names. We find about 43 instances of the name in that index on my webpage. And we found it in King James Irish Army List, in the families of Dublin, and the families of County Donegal, both those books. And first initial J. Porter is found in Irish Knighthoods. And Porter Arms is given in the index to the County Longford genealogy book we publish. And Farley Porter is given in volume 26 of the Journal of the American Irish Historical Society. And that just leaves us, we'll take one more of those. The names of passengers from Ireland, there were 9 listings of the Porter name in there. Now that does it for that. We're going to move on to what's it going to be, websites of the week. Well, we're going to pick at least 4, maybe 5 places today. What did we see that was interesting? You know what? irishfamilyresearch.co.uk/Irish Family Research is a good place to go to search for online records in Ireland. And click that link on our blog. You can go there right away, or you can try typing that in, pick up on it. But that's a real good resource I found. So if you're researching and you're looking for records, do not forget to look there. Number 2, the Irish Aylwards of Shippagan, New Brunswick. Now, that's a good one for the Aylwards family, and I saw it and I thought, well, hey, let's pick that up. I hadn't seen it before, so that's number 2. Number 3, the School of Canadian Irish Studies. Hey, that they said is just picking up real good. It started out just as a minor course, and it's really taken off like wildfire, so that's a good thing. I have a link to the blog. You can click on there and learn more about it. We picked that up off of irishcentral.com. Number 4, an immigrant village is uncovered in Maryland. And I told you that earlier we were going to tell you a little bit more about that. And it seems that an Irish village is being uncovered in Baltimore County. And it's the first time an Irish immigrant village has been uncovered like this. And archaeology students at the University of Maryland, College Park, are doing the dig. And the original immigrants, those Irishmen, they came over and they called it Texas because they were headed to Texas, but they decided they had gotten as far as they wanted to go. So they planted their flag and they called it Texas. It's an interesting story, so you might want to look at it. You got the link on the blog. And that's also covered in the Baltimore Sun newspaper. The same story. You might get a little different slant on it and some different photographs. So there's 2 good sources on the blog there. It's an interesting one. Well, now it's time for everybody's favorite, the last installment of the show each week, and it's Curious News and Notes. Well, number 1, hey, what are the most far-out Irish groups that you see around the web? Well, they took a look on Facebook, and I've seen that before, too. Of course, now, the Irish Roots page, which is my page for my fans on Facebook, that's a nice, calm page, can't you say now? But look at some of these other groups, the Irish Mafia, Irish Jews, Irish Bowling, and there's a lot more of them out there. I'm not going to repeat some of them. They don't bear repeating, Some people just like to muck up a good thing, so we won't talk about that. But I've got a link on the blog to an article from Irish Central, which investigated that story, and if you've been on the web for long, you know that there sure are a lot of crazy Irish folks out there, or should we say a lot of crazy Irish American folks. We might take the cake, I'm not sure. Number 2, Michael Flatley, that famous Riverdance star, he may end up taking the judge's seat on Dancing with the Stars, and, he's the famous one. He's the one that did all that fancy dancing, and they're saying he might actually be the one on there. I wonder if he'd do a better job than the current judge. I don't know. But hey, that'd be interesting if he did. I think they'd have a bump up in audience, at least initially. Got the link on the blog to that story. Number 3, The Legend of Granuel, Grace O'Malley. The show is in Westport County, Mayo, and it's running from July and August. I've been out there. Been up to Westport County, Mayo, and I also saw O'Malley's Grace's castle out there on the bay, you might call it. And she was, how do they describe her here? A pirate, chieftain, lover, and mother in the 16th century Ireland. And Granuel was one of the last Irish clan leaders to resist the English conquest of the Gaelic Ireland. That's true. And she was also friends with O'Flaherty, who was no friend to the English. That's a fact. And you know what? She even met with the Queen of Ireland. The Queen of Ireland, there had no such thing, really. The Queen of England. Now, that would have been a sight to behold. An Irish pirate queen having an official audience with the Queen of England. Boy, I wonder what they would have said in that nice little chat with her taking down some English ships and what have you. I would have just loved to know. Hey, number 4, here's something important if you're going to Ireland or even if you're talking to somebody Irish. Sometimes things can get confused and your words get mixed up and you don't know why the other party has a funny look on their face. But here's some examples of some words. If you walk in and you say, I'd like some bangers, well, that's sausage. And if you say, hey, look over there in your boot, it doesn't mean to look down at your foot. It means to look in your car trunk. That's what a boot is. And if you want some French fries, you ask for chips. You say, hey, could I have some chips? And that way you'll get some French fries. Otherwise, you won't be getting what you think. And crack, what's that mean? That means just plain old fun. And if they say Lori's gonna be by here in a few minutes, well, that's a truck. And if you want some bacon in the morning, you ask for rashers. I got to remember that one. I love those rashers. And there's a few other things. Hey, there's one thing I think most of folks around here, when I hear them step up and order a drink that's like half Guinness and half Harp, they stand up and they might ask for a black and tan. Well, that's sort of a no-no in certain areas. A lot of bad and painful associations with black and tan, so you might ask for half and half. That might be a little bit more sensitive. And number 5, I've included Grammys Irish Brown Bread recipe, a link to the recipe itself. But you look at those ingredients, and it starts off with 3 cups of extra coarse wholemeal flour and 1 cup of oat bran. Boy, you're going to have some healthy bread here. And they say this was a recipe that Margaret Hickey handed down. And you'll have to go to the blogs, the New York Times blogs there. I got it on my blog, too. You just click. It'll take you right up there to you. And Riverfront Irish and Diddley Eye both had that on the web. I picked it up, and it just looked like a handy-dandy recipe. So you'll have to let me know how that recipe turns out. I'm not going to have time enough to be baking bread here. Number 6, Boston has been named to host the World Irish Dancing Championships, and that will be March 24th to 31st, 2013 at Heinz Memorial Auditorium. And this is the second time the event has been held in the U.S. The first time was in Philadelphia earlier this year, and I made that announcement late last year. I found that out, and I thought that was interesting. The World Irish Championships being held in the States. Now it's 2 years, not in a row, but this will be the second time. So it's good that we got a place at the table, don't you think? Well, that does it for now. I tell you, I got to start packing and laying out all my stuff and make sure it looks right. And remember to send your comments by clicking the contact link on the webpage at irishroots.com and send to the Irish Roots Cafe, Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri, 64116. Leave your message or report on things in your part of the world when you call my phone recorder at 816-256-3360. Skype me at the Irish Roots Cafe. Find me on MySpace at Irish Roots Cafe, and on Facebook at Mike OLaughlin, and on Twitter as Irish Roots Cafe. You'll find me, folks. You know that. And remember, members foot the bill, so they get first priority, but we're open to all. And by the way, a big thank you to all of our members. And away.